This episode of Fireball the Gazebo is being recorded on Halloween, the spookiest day of the entire year. Werewolf bar mitzvah, boys becoming men, men becoming wolves. Vince, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm in my normal costume of regular person,
Vince,
as you can see here.
not regular person, Vince.
Yes, exactly. I have my apron, I have my vest, all the important parts of my normal costume that I wear. Minimum of 4 layers at all points
It
in
is
time.
a key number. The number is 4. The number must only be 4 of layers that Vince is wearing on his torso at any given time. If not, he is not complete. That is a t-shirt, specifically a t-shirt with a very niche saying or phrase from an obscure pop culture reference. Let's see if I can get today's. Vince, it looks like a circle that's a bird. Is it a bird circle?
It's a circle that's a bird. Do you know what it is?
This is obviously this is the Mockingjay symbol from.
It is not.
Okay.
We'll give a second here to see if anybody in the audience can get it there. Now that I actually showed the whole thing.
Any viewers of watching this on YouTube, it looks like a yin yang symbol, but it's birds.
Kind of.
And if you're just audio listener, first of all, thanks for being an audio listener. It means a lot. You can always hop over to the YouTube and see if there's any visuals that you want to get. So he's got weird maroon shirt, followed by are you Dwight Schruting it? Is it short sleeve flannel shirt, short sleeve dress shirt, or long sleeve?
This is long sleeve today because it's cold now.
Right. We get to the autumn, you're not Dwight Schruting it up. And then his very specific vest, and then obviously on top of that is the painting smock, right?
Always on.
Never not wearing the smock. That's how you know
smock stays on.
You are a true hobbyist. That paint could come upon ye at any moment.
At any point in time, you never know. You just got to be ready. Ready if it happens.
Right. Yes. Or fake blood. 'Tis the season. So Vince, how you doing?
I'm good, buddy. I'm good. I've had it's been a very busy week, obviously, since you guys have left, getting everything ready. I have to travel for work next week, which is going to complicate our recording schedule, but we'll figure it out. And yeah, for the most part, it's been just a very intense hobby week. That's been my week, but I had a great game. I'm ready with a story. Would you like me to share a story?
I'd love nothing more than a story about Dungeons and Dragons.
I saw some people responding that they like the little vignettes.
Okay.
And I'm glad to hear that. I try to keep it tight. So here's my little vignette I want to share from this last week. In our notes, it says Galeb Dur, Good Undead, and Godzilla. Let me explain. So the party basically has gotten caught up into this sort of like orc front of the war. They decided to kind of go and track the orcs that escaped after their big orc battle with 140 orcs. But the orcs, they can't catch up with them. Orcs run as if the very whips of their masters are at their back.
I know. It's one of their great many skills.
Absolutely. And then at some point, they basically, when they're out there, they're sort of camping, things happen, whatever. And then they run into the Baron. So this is like they're participating in the War of Four Barons. And they run into the Baron who's over this particular area, who's out there patrolling with his knights. And he's like the best of them. So he's like a high-level paladin of Torm. He doesn't actually want the throne. He just wants to keep his land safe. So he rode north following the orc, a different splinter of this orc horde as well, right? And he runs across the PCs and basically is like, boy, I sure wish there was somebody who could help me out with this orc problem. If only there was somebody who could help little old me out. And of course, the PCs were more that like they're good people. They jumped on that. They were like, yeah, we're ready. We'll go kill some orcs. Let's do this. And so, which also led to a very funny scene of after they had killed some orcs, of the necromancer in the party being like, so you guys cool if I like animate these guys? Because I have animate dead now. And so that's the good undead part, right? Because he's like, I'm going to use them for good. Yeah. It's all fine. And then the sensibilities of everybody watching him, raise their fallen foes up into skeletons or zombies or whatever. And it just hits different, like, because he's animated dead animals for a while. But in the end, like, like if you kill a bear or something, and then the necromancer raises it, most people are like, okay.
Yeah.
yeah, and they move on with their life. Like, it's a little gross, but it's whatever. When you start animating some version of people, right? You get to a whole different level. Now, ironically, we have a paladin. We have the paladin who just dual classed into becoming a priest of Lathander, the Morning Lord, whose number one thing he hates is undead.
Bro.
Okay. Was not there. She was out sick this week. Okay. So he animates all this undead, and I'm like, I just like write down in my notes, make sure to have this conversation next week when she comes back, right? I'm like, we'll put a little pin in that for some intra-party strife. Okay. So that's which is fine. I'm sure that that'll all work out, no problem. And so the PCs end up going north. They find the big orc camp. They like find a town that's preparing for the orcs to come and all this stuff. And they go and they spy on the orc camp, and they find that there's a merchant meeting with the orcs, like a human merchant, who seems to be unloading weapons and gear. Okay.
Oh,
like
no.
high quality weapons and armor.
He's a war dog. He's just in.
So we've got, there's some kind of chicanery afoot, right? Shenanigans.
Yeah.
Okay. So they're like, all right, well, we try to figure. So there's like a ranger and a rogue that are out doing the scouting of the work camp. And they're like, we want to figure out where the wagon came in from, because he'll probably leave that way. I'm like, okay, it's fine. You can go around and scout the outside. They're being careful. They're both invisible, which in second edition lasts 24 hours if you don't attack. It's amazing.
Hot damn.
It's an amazing spell. It's great. It can also lead to you dying, by the way, because if you go unconscious, invisible, you just bleed to death because no one knows where you are.
You need somebody to feel around on the ground.
Yeah, see, it's a very high risk spell. But at any rate, they scout around, they figure out where the wagon is, and they go and they're like, okay, we're going to set up an ambush for the wagon. So they're in the mountains, right? The low mountains. And they set up this ambush. And I'm like, well, I'm going to roll and see if there's a random encounter out here. Because they're in the middle of the freaking wilderness, not far, like a mile and a half from an orc camp, 2 miles from an orc camp. This feels like a great place for a random encounter. So I roll and I get one. I'm like, okay. So I have a big table of like all the different biomes and then like what they could run into. And I roll, and the first thing I roll on the table, just like straight drop, is reptilian gargantua.
Oh.
Okay. Do you know what a reptilian gargantua is?
Is that like the Tarask?
It's Godzilla. It's just Godzilla.
Oh, Godzilla.
Okay.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
It's like a 200-foot tall lizard monster who can like has massive claws, like, and all this kind of stuff. It's just Godzilla. It is like legally distinct wish.com Godzilla. Okay. And I'm like, all right, I'm not going to use that random encounter. That's too silly. They're like setting up an ambush, and then like Godzilla pokes around his head around the mountain.
It's like, oh, hey guys.
Like, hey guys, what's up? What are you guys doing? Now, I didn't do it because it was just too silly in my head. And I think that's always like, as the GM, you always have to be like, the dice should never be your master.
No,
we'll talk about fudging rolls in a future episode. But I'm doubly glad afterward, because at the end of the game, so we play through the whole game, and I tell them, hey, I actually rolled a reptilian gargantua as the first thing. I'm like, here's a funny behind the scenes story, right? And they're like, oh, it's a shame you didn't use that. And they reminded me that the ranger who's on his like royalty quest, his crown that he wears, one of its secondary abilities is the ability to control without save all reptilian creatures within 1 mile of his position. So if Godzilla would have showed up, the ranger would have immediately taken unbreakable control of the creature, and this orc war would have been over very fast.
Yeah.
Because he would have been like, all right, Godzilla, go smash that orc base. And just, okay. And just like everybody dies.
No, it's probably good you didn't, because like, how do you break that? Like, just
right,
I'm just chilling next to Godzilla forever now.
Yes, correct. This guy's new pet is Godzilla. Yeah, it's a problem.
You know, on the plus side, we now have a clear line to how he's actually going to get the crown. He's going to physically take it by Godzilla force.
Yes. So, yeah, absolutely. Like, boy, that would have really changed the whole face of the war. So, anyways, I re-roll on the table, and I roll Galeb Dur. Do you know what a Galeb Dur is?
Looking at it written down, I know that I've seen it before, but I can't picture what that monster is.
Okay.
The demon?
So, no, it's not. It's a little rock man. Okay. Galeb Dur are really adorable. They are
like the little Princess Mononoke rattleheads.
No, they're like little rock people. okay, basically is what I would say. They're very, very cute. Have like little rock faces, and they look like little rocks. And the best way I would explain them is, you know what a tree end is, right? Yeah.
I do. Tree person, yeah.
Okay. You can picture a tree end. So if you can picture a tree end, they're like tree ends are to trees what Galeb Dur are to rocks.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. And so here's a little picture of them, John. I'll share this here real quick. There you go. That's what a Galeb Dur looks like. Look at their funny little faces.
Oh my
Okay.
gosh. Yeah, the cute little egg people made of rock.
They're cute little egg rock people.
Yeah.
Adorable. So, um, needless to say, the ranger had like rolled to set them up in camouflage, but had failed to do so with any skill. And so I was like, okay, well, and like there was one PC alone in one area. And he's like, I crouched down behind some rocks. And I was like, oh, great. Okay, I know what's going on here. So he sits there, and then the three rocks are like, hello. And the other one's like, yeah, what are you doing crouching down back here? Are you a bandit? And then the other one's like, yes, he seems like a bandit, but he's wearing a holy symbol. That's very unusual for bandits. So like then we get the Larry Moe Curly of the three Galeb Dur, because there's like three there. They have three different personalities. One is like the little, hey, what's the problem, guy? Little guy. Then you have like the slow talking one, right? And then you have like the cultured British Galeb Dur,
Right,
and the
right.
three of them are like a little family.
Right.
What's fascinating about Galeb Dur is they exist in family units. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. They live in little families, but basically like four of them, 3 to 4 of them. And they just have little family clusters, and they have like parents and children and stuff like that at they see it. And they tend to the rocks. They don't like to see people breaking up rocks and stuff like that. So the wagon that they're going to ambush is like rolling up while these three are having an active conversation with the player, who does not know what is going on and does not know who these three people are, and are they friend or foe, and what is this. And so, of course, that just throws off the whole ambush, and then hilarity ensues.
It's great.
It was great. It ended up being like, it wasn't a combat encounter, because I knew there's like a couple, like second, third level guards on the caravan. Like, it was nothing that the PCs would actually fight. And so it was just a chance to make the scene much more fun and interesting. And the Galeb Dur aren't aggressive, right? As soon as the Galeb Dur learned they weren't going to be breaking any rocks, they're cool with them, right?
Yeah.
So, and they can like animate rocks and move them around and stuff like that. So once he made friends with them, they like, the little one like animated 2 boulders and like rolled them into the cart, so it was locked in place so it couldn't get away, and stuff like that. And it became their little friends, and they talked about their society, and they asked them about the orcs, because they knew a little about the orcs in the area and stuff like that. There was a little bit of information gathering, but also they were like, well, and the Galeb Dur are like, yeah, I mean, they're like, what do you think of the orcs? They're like, oh, we don't care. Orcs don't mess with rocks much, so we're basically cool with them. And they're like, as long as they're not the short ones with the long fuzzy faces, those are the ones we can't stand. They destroy all the rocks. Like, their most hated enemy is dwarves.
It makes sense. It makes sense. Yeah, the miners
Busting up rocks all the time.
They don't like any miners, of any kind. Wouldn't make sense. It's a nice.
So, anyways,
it's a nice
that
flavor.
Was the scene. It was a fun scene.
That's such a great example of how you take a character's failed role, that whether they were aware of it or not, and you bring a level of like interest and like explanation of how the world made that happen. It wasn't necessarily that he did a terrible job of actually being sneaky. It was that he was talking to rocks as the wagon rolled up, and that's why they knew that he was there. And like,
exactly,
sometimes that, like, those extra little things that bring spice to your world and make it a memorable moment also expedite the way the PCs choose to like engage in a scene, because sometimes they get a little wishy-washy, or they get a little bit like, what's the optimal way for us to haha, and they don't just run off, or we catch them off guard, or we don't know if they're combatant or not, and like they can overthink it. In this way, it's just like, oh, we're here now, right? And I really like that.
We're here now. There's chaos happening. They just have to roll with it. It also made them less violent,
Mm.
because they were in the middle of a talky scene.
Yeah.
Right? So because they were in the middle of a talky scene, their initial instinct wasn't, well, let's just kill all these caravan guards. right? I don't know if that would have been their instinct otherwise, but it certainly wasn't here. It kept them in like we're talking mode. This is a role playing scene,
Yeah.
not a fight scene,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. As we know, it's more often than not that the players default to be on guard and assume the worst first, and the worst is typically, drawing steel.
Yep. And so it was just a very fun scene. Their names, by the way, were Chip, Slate, and Erg, just in case people
Oh,
are curious. So there you go.
we got there.
Yeah.
Grandma Igneous, she's up the hill a ways.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. They talked about their other family that lived nearby, their extended family. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. And even though it's only been like 3 days since we last recorded because we were a little bit behind because of VinciCon, and then we're knocking this one out on time like reasonable adults. I'm actually playing on Sunday, but last session or last episode, I didn't talk about a fun little event that occurred in my last session, so I want to bring that up. And I wrote
Yeah, yeah.
down the title of everyone's favorite book, How to Win Friends and Possess People, and that is exactly
Definitely the title.
what started to happen in our campaign, and it really opened my eyes of an interesting way to have NPC interaction and have the story and even history that is harder for usually players to come by without some kind of like long ass boring monologue by your DM about like, but
Okay.
in 1400 years ago, then there was the
Sure.
lava age, and in the lava age, you're like, I don't give a shit. Get to the part where we're involved, right? So
Right.
in this campaign, it's all about souls and how souls are kind of constantly brought back and kind of recycled. And your soul has some connections and has some innate abilities about who you are. You learn that as you kind of grow. And there's also this whole soul trapping kind of icky side of this where different cultures and societies will soul lock people because either they know once they've uncovered whose soul they have, well, that's actually a really powerful, influential person. Let's soul lock them so they have no connection
Sure.
to their soul. And it's almost like this gross level of slavery. So our group is trying to unearth the mystery of soul locking and to try to free people from this. Um, we found one of the key wizards in a pyramid and who's been long dead in his tome. And somehow, when we confronted him, he sucked himself in to one of the players in our group, and he's kind of possessed that player. Now he has no
Sure.
active control over their body or their mind, but sometimes he's ever present. He's just kind of there, and sometimes he'll speak up. Sometimes he'll say happenstance weird things. Sometimes the character will be like, "Oh, I remember this weird thing, but I don't ever remember doing that." It's him, and so that's been really fun. A way to kind of like breadcrumb trail some interesting tidbits of story, of history, of important things that we may be interested in looking into, unearthing clues in a way that feels very organic and natural, and even help us if we kind of get stuck in something. So it's a really good way of like, you always have somebody with us. We're not required at any point to have these NPCs. Well, in the last session, we found this other pyramid in a sandstorm that was just like slightly peeking out. And being the numbskulls that we were, we decided we're going to find a way to get inside of that pyramid, not connected to the story at all. No reason for us to waste our time doing it. But adventures be
I
it,
mean, it's probably full of cool stuff.
it was full of cool stuff, and it was a full like puzzle pyramid, which was a lot of fun. And
Yeah.
figuring out the puzzles from the four, we had to collect all these little tiny onyx statues representing different animals that are oftentimes revered in Egyptian culture. Once we were able to collect them all through the different puzzle rooms, we could unearth the actual tomb room. Found out that this was a sorceress lady who was an enemy of the wizard that's now inhabiting one of our PCs. So they're
Fun.
so they're
Okay, great.
like they were like arch enemies 1500 years ago, and she recognizes that he's in there. It was an awesome, epic boss fight. A lot of stuff going on, and I meant to send you a picture because we ran this whole fairly complex boss fight on a tiny whiteboard that was like 1 by 2, and
Love it.
it went so
It's all
quick.
you need,
It
baby.
went so quick, and it kept the excitement, the energy, and everything going. We knew whereabouts we were. We put little X's and we move little magnets. Boom. Amazing fight. At the end, she possessed one of the fighter in our group. And remember, we have 4 PCs. And she took control of his body. He became the boss monster at that point. And so now it's 3 versus the best fighter in our group. And it was wild. And he was like fighting to control himself, trying to like make himself run around and not fight, but he could only do so much. And at the end, we realized if we knock him unconscious, that'll break it. And then we can deal with the dead sorceress. Unfortunately, some tiny bit of her consciousness, her soul, is still stuck in him. He wakes up, and that's where the session ended. And now we have 2 arch enemy NPCs have a slight level of possession over
I
our
love
of
this.
our characters, and I don't know what's going to happen from here. So, yeah, fun, unique ways that you can have the story, the NPC interaction, the history, all these things engage in your players that doesn't feel forced, and that was, I'm really liking where this is going.
Well, I love that so much. I love possession as an entire sort of mechanic and what it does and how it changes things, especially when it's not like a solid lock, like what
Yes.
you're talking about, where there's some
Yes.
interaction with it still. It's such a fun, weird mechanic. It shows up in stories all the time and movies and stuff, right?
Mhm.
Like this is just such a classic trope. And it's much more interesting when there's like some ability to fight back, resist, still act. Like when you're kind of like when your friend and the possessing entity are like fighting for control of the thing. That's just a great time. That's a
Yeah,
great time.
you know that it's still you, and then the rest of the group isn't just going to simply turn on you because I'm still here. I just fighting my own internal struggles right now. Suddenly, and you can manifest it in really fun ways too. And it's just like you go to the tavern and you're like, you definitely want the stew. You don't like stew, but you're really craving the stew. Like make fun
Sure.
little ways that it like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it
That's good.
it integrates it adds a level of flavor, and it also allows you give some ownership to the player to role play situations where let them control the being that's possessing you.
100%. Yes.
There's no easy
Yes.
way for either a new role player or somebody that isn't their strong suit to just have some fun because they get to keep it at arm's reach, and not feel like it's me playing this character and I feel awkward because it's me. It's them, right? That was a lot of fun. So we'll see what happens this Sunday in our next session. All right, we got a little bit of news to cover here, Vince.
We do. We got a couple little pieces of news, a couple little bits of news. So first off, we talked about the annotated chronicles last week, and
Mm-hmm.
that's, as we said, hard to find. But um, if you're interested in picking up those original stories, the Dragonlance novels, because obviously, probably something is going to be happening with them. Last year, they had released a new hardcover collected edition of the Dragons of series.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Penguin Random House did, and this year they're continuing that. They announced that they're releasing Dragonlance Legends as a hardcover, which is a collection of the Twins series. So Time of
Yes.
the Twins, Death of the Twins, so on and so forth, right? Which like legitimately, I think I probably like the Twins. It's funny because as much as I love the Dragons of Autumn Twilight and all of that, right, which I do, I think it's an absolutely amazing story. I think it's probably like I would actually probably rank it like third in the sort of Dragonlance stories, underneath the Twin series, which I just think is like really good and interesting. And I think like Raistlin and Caramon both have a lot of pathos in the series. But then I'd actually put like the Legend of Humor at the top. I just really love the Legend of Humor.
Yeah, me
Anyways,
too.
so but the Twin series is really, really good. And so if you've never read the Twin series and like the continued story of Raistlin and Caramon and sort of everybody else there associated, it's very much worth a look at. And so now people will be able to collect that stuff more easily in this new beautiful collected edition. So there you go.
Raceland and Caramon, whether you know it or not, 75% of the fighters and wizards at your D&D table are just those characters.
Yeah, indeed. They really did set a template, right? Yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, I mean, we've all played at that. I mean, have you ever played a wizard that full on has a journey into darkness?
No.
Like, or a character like that, like, because Raceland goes evil.
Yeah.
That's not like a maybe he's evil. Like he's evil.
Yeah, isn't there? It feels like more often than not, there's one player at your D&D table that like it doesn't matter what class or what character they're playing. You're just kind of like, are you kind of going evil? Or was this kind of your plan from the beginning, and then you just kind of have to tiptoe around it with like. It's what's so great in the Chronicle series is like there's various moments that just about every character they're either trying to talk themselves out of the fact of the
Yeah,
obvious.
sure. Everybody's trying to forgive him. Yeah, yeah, because
Yes.
they know him.
Yes. And so they all know better, but they also recognize in the greater scheme of things of if they have any chance of success, they need him because he holds a power that none of them can hold the flame to. You just hope that he has the physical fortitude at any one point to do it, and that he chooses to, because you're not always confident that Raceland's going to do what you really really hope he does. So they make a level of interest in that. And I will say Caraman is a much more complex character the more that
Sure.
you read those books. And
Yep.
actually, I think people that play a stereotypical fighter and barbarian would really get some good insight to how you can play one with it's got a lot more depth to them and more interesting facets to who they are as a character that really brings them to life. But yeah, when I say a lot of people play those characters, they play the two-dimensional versions of those characters often.
Sure. Sure. Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Okay. So also on the tip of sort of nostalgia, I suppose, Sirius, this company is releasing this line of metal miniatures based on they're starting with a set of 3 miniatures based on the 1977 Holmes box set. And you know this box set, even if you don't know it. So it's the one with the red dragon and then like the fighter and the wizard staring him down.
Yeah.
They're like at the front of the frame. So those 3 figures are getting little metal minis. Okay. So the dragon, the wizard, and the fighter are all getting their little mini. They're all sculpted basically to be the people on the cover. That sort of thing. It's based on the original art. And so there you go.
It's a weird thing
You
for
know,
a Sirius XM radio to release, but okay. um,
this is obviously for people who have a deep love and nostalgia of like this
percent.
particular thing and want like grew up with those little ugly metal figures you would get at like the mall from that one store or something
The
like
mall
that.
ninja shop for sure.
Yes, the mall ninja shop. Yes. If you were a fan of those little things.
I had those. I bought so many of those. Those were the first miniatures I ever got. Oftentimes they'd have a little crystal. Like the wizard always had a crystal,
Sure.
or there's a crystal on the
All wizard
base.
always had to have a crystal. Yes.
Real
Yes.
crystals. You got to paint around the crystal. Can't ever paint the crystal. It's beautiful. Now, are they resculpts or are they like true
Yeah,
to?
it's brand new sculpts.
Okay.
It's brand new sculpts. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. That's
Yep.
enticing. All right. I'll look into that. There's a need as more
So,
shit.
and then lastly, this is kind of adjacent, but pretty awesome. So Talesworth Game Studio, their publisher Dread XP, released on Steam. This thing called like a free thing you could play called The Secret of Weepstone.
Mm-hmm.
And John, like I would highly recommend that our audience like Google this if you love a classic sort of like indie black and white old school RPG adventure, because it's all like this. It's basically a first person. Do you remember playing the RPGs when we were young on computer or console where it was like first person, you're like
Just
moving
see
through
the
the dungeon,
tunnel.
like the monsters would,
Yeah.
yeah, and like the monsters would come at you down the tunnel and stuff. Yeah. It's that, but all with like this beautiful hand drawn black and white art. So
Ooh.
everything's in black and white. Everything is like super stylish, looks kind of like a woodcut type of thing. And it's like the basic premise is you're in this town, Weepstone, and everything's fallen to crap, and there's no heroes coming, and so you're like either mercenaries or common people from the town or whatever cultists trying to get in. You're just like a bunch of losers trying your best to get into this dungeon and figure out its secrets, get its magic items, and survive, right? And like ultimately defeat whatever's at the end. And it has like permadeath as part of it. Like your characters will permadie, but you get a little kick for your next character when from your dead characters and stuff like that. So it's just super cool. I don't get much time to play video games anymore, but if I did, this would absolutely be the type of video game I would want to play. I just think it looks absolutely amazing.
I know.
So
I just Googled it and looked at the actual in-game art, and I'm like, wow, this looks pretty badass.
Right.
This is a good bit of news. I'm all for this. This looks fun. So if any of the Gazeboids try it out or have played the free demo, please let us know your thoughts. So if we need to know, we need to dig into this thing. I'm willing and able to manufacture time that I should be doing something else to do this instead.
Just feels like a great old school dungeon crawl, gritty, kind of like what books used to look like some time ago,
Yep.
right? So like again, this is the nostalgia bit of Newsday, I guess, is what it is.
That's what
So
we've learned.
there you go.
The art style seems very similar to the Shadowdark books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Which
if you like Shadowdark and that sort of aesthetic, that sort of play, I think this is just like, this is going to be a bullseye on your taste, is my read. Yeah, 100%.
I love it. I love it. All right, we're going to get into the main topic for today. And we could have easily done a topic on Halloween related, doing a spooky, scary horror stuff, but we didn't think of that. So instead.
Right. Also, it'll be like after Halloween when this actually comes out. Like we're recording on Halloween. At some point, it'll line up to where Halloween happens on a show release date, and that's when we'll do it.
Okay. Deal. We'll do it then. We'll talk about how to make your games creepy and scary, but that's not today. Today, we are going to talk about actually creating a unique, in-depth character, one that's true to the way you envision their story, their growth, their background, everything pulls together. And of course, in order to do that, you have to go beyond the structure and rigid nature of a single class. So we are going to dig into multiclassing, kits, prestige classes, subclasses, and which edition did it best. So Vince,
That's
can you
right.
give us the 30,000 foot view of this and why it matters?
Yeah, let's start at the base. Let's build a foundation. Okay. So when we talk about multiclassing, prestige classes, kits, subclasses, all of this, right? It's all of a kind. And the first question is like, sometimes people are like, well, why does this even matter? Isn't this just for power gamers? Right? Like, what's wrong with playing human fighter to level 20 and I don't need any other rules?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't need any of this crap. I just need good old human fighter, and everything about me will manifest during the game. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll find some magic items and all my character, my personality, all of those things. That'll be all the stuff. And if that's you, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay. And I know there is a cohort of people like that who are like, who think all of this is nonsense. All right. And all they want, like, you're a lot of your old school Renaissance people, your OSR people who are going back to, very, very early editions. This is what they want, right? Like they're just interested in playing a fighter and discovering like the journey this fighter goes on. And that's it. They're not looking for other rules additions to that. Okay. But I am. I am. Okay. Because to me, we talked in our last show about character arcs. And I think there is value to the game providing you with a mechanical expression of your character's growth, unique abilities, the way to differentiate yourself from others. So like I'm a fighter who fights like this as opposed to a fighter who fights like that. Like when we did our fighter episode, I asked people to tell us in the comments what their image of a fighter was in their head. Like when I say fighter, what pops into your head? And we did get quite a varied response. I mean, the most common was certainly like a, person in armor with a shield and a longsword or something, right? But there were other images in people's heads. And having some actual way to mechanically differentiate, to have the rules speak to that, right, in some way, to me is actually highly valuable.
Right.
It allows you to actually see the manifestation of everything from your background and where you started sort of pre moment one of the game, right? All the way through, right? And like I like all of this stuff. I love, and in most editions, I've played characters that multi-class or to prestige classes or kits and blah 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 blah. And we'll talk about the differences in the editions, but like this is a section of the game that I've frequently taken advantage of because ultimately the characters that were in my head didn't always fit neatly into the box of like, well, you're just a bard or something.
Right.
And that's it.
Yeah. And they do allow you to do very minor versions of this without having to invest in things like a multi-class or a prestige class or a subclass in like your choices of which skills you take. But those are oftentimes fairly basic, and they don't typically allow you to become any level of heroic version of something, right? You don't get the extra sauce, the extra depth that really showcase why you're unique at it. You just happen to be a fighter that's trained in stealth, so you can sneak around a bit, and that's a good starting point. And that's a good way for you if you want to stick to an individual class to differentiate yourself. But if the bar is so low of just I put one of my points for skills into this, then I argue that you're not really differentiating, or you're not really as unique because the level was so little of investment to do so. By forcing yourself to make more of a commitment, you're actually forcing yourself into the development in the arc of your character. It's like, well, I'm making a decision that is not the easiest, obvious mental checkout decision. And so I'm doing that for a reason. And that's, I think we can dig into that in a little bit. But my initial reaction, because I'm hearing the voices of gazeboids through my possessed soul right now.
They are psychically speaking to you from the future.
They
Yes, I
say,
understand.
but Vince,
You're in touch with them.
What if you allow everyone to just multi-class or prestige class or whatever? Won't they just take the strongest, best thing of each classes, and then they'll just make the most powerful character?
Yep. This is the other side of the equation, right? This is, again, this sort of thing is just for power gamers. It's a sort of that it's an expression of that argument, right?
Mm-hmm.
And here's what I'll say. Okay. The reality is that once you invite all of this stuff into the game, and by the way, it's different in different editions, and we'll touch on it, but some of these more or less fall into what I would call the build trap.
Okay.
Okay. So the easiest example, and we'll deep dive, but think of how prestige classes forced you to have like certain feats, certain skills, certain whatever to get into the prestige class in third edition D&D, right? So that would create the build trap like instantaneously, where you're like, okay, at level 1, I take this, and I'm a human, and this is my bonus feat. And then I take this, and then I level up this skill here. And then at this level, I take this feat, and then here, and then I can jump into the prestige class. And then bop, 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 bop. And it's just like your entire journey
is pre-mapped
from 1 to 20 is just pre-mapped out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And to me, that is a problem, because the point of this is supposed to allow you to build what you want, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And some people do take a lot of psychological utility from like thinking through their characters. The problem is it requires you to plan so much. I don't mind people like building out and thinking about the future of their character. Of course you should do that. We all do. When we make a character, we all dream of like, oh, wouldn't it be neat when I get this fun thing at some high level, right? Or whatever. There's nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And as we talked about very early in the podcast, most people can only dream of it. They'll never see it because the vast majority of people will never go beyond level like 7, right? Which is very sad to me. As someone who's like right now in our second edition game, most of the players are level 9 and 10. And by the way, we're not stopping anytime soon.
Yeah.
Okay. We are chugging. Anyways, so I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem with is the way the build trap locks you in, so that if something interesting does happen during the game, if you get a chance to grow or change or have an interesting road you could go down, nope, it's off the table. I've already pre-committed all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like 3 feats and 4 skills deep in my investment toward this. Right? I can't change now. The sunk cost fallacy grows with every single level. And so you just become rigid. That's what I don't like. Right? Because I do believe that you should be open to collaboratively building your character with the DM, with the other players, and with what you experience. That should be part of it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And in an ideal world, because third edition, 3.5, Pathfinder, and now Pathfinder second edition are very guilty of this. And I can tell you as a Pathfinder second edition player for many years that it's the satisfaction you get from the character can, if you're not careful, can very quickly be the building and planning of the character level by level and not the actual playing of the character. And that's dangerous because the playing should be the awesome part. And it's just more like, now I'm one step closer. And you have discussions with your fellow players. And you're like, level 11 is a big level for me. It's where everything comes
Right.
together. And my power
Yep.
spike just jumps massively from 10 to 11. I think there's a middle ground there of like, look, talk to your DM. I really want to get this prestige class. Or I really want to be able to do this. And be like, can I do that? You're like, yeah, we can work your way towards that and do that in a way that doesn't pigeonhole you every step of the way. So you can be more nimble, you can be more open-minded, and you can find that without the fear of like not seeing the character that I want to play it ever coming to
Right.
fruition, you know?
That's right. And I'll say, like, to your original point of, a thing for power gamers, I hope I've rebuffed that. Like what I mean is, it's there for people to use and explore and find and build the things that are actually in their head. But ultimately, I'm not willing to let a few bad apples actually spoil a bunch. I take those apples and I throw them away. That's how you keep a bunch of apples good. You get rid of the bad apples. Okay. So,
You
like,
talk about
if I have,
killing your players and only letting the good players survive.
correct. Yes, it's a Hunger Game situation.
Yes.
No, what I'm saying is, like, if there's something that's bad or broken, I'll either, like, if it's truly bad or toxic, I'll just be like, yo, dog, you can't do that. We're not allowing that in this game.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the GM. It's my game. You get to say what races and species and classes and multi-class options and all that crap. You just get to say what's available in your game. And by the way, if you're a jerk about it and no one wants to play, well, then you ain't playing a game.
Right.
Right. So, like, but if one person comes to you, if everybody's being reasonable and one person comes to you and is like, I got this super ridiculous build. This is all the time in third edition with the ridiculous
Yeah.
builds, right? Like, my character makes an opportunity attack against everybody who moves within 30 feet of me every round all the time. It's like, okay, cool. Either I'm going to let you play that and then constantly throw people who are just magic missiling you from 120 feet away. And you're going to have to just like deal with this reality that happens a lot. Or I'm just not going to let you play that because it's going to be really piss ass annoying.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse my language, right? But like, and I'll just say, please don't do that. That sounds like it's going to be really unfun.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, do you have any other ideas? What could we do that's another idea for you? Right? Like, you can work with your players to get rid of the bad idea. So I don't think that, like, because some people could abuse it is a reason you just excise it from the system.
Yeah.
I think that's just bad form.
The natural difficulty of it is because what we are doing is you're inviting in a level of variability that any singular DM probably doesn't have full information and mastery of, to know, like, okay, there's all these other classes and you could multi-class into any of them. And if you get 2 levels of this and then that combos with what you had from your core class and blah, 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 like, you just don't know what shenanigans they're getting themselves into, what they're working towards. And that's why I think, going back to one of the core fundamentals that we talk about all the time in this podcast, is the communication. Be like, okay, so you want to take Wizard because let it show itself either in the story leading up to your character's decision, like your paladin, in the story is why she chose to then go to cleric. You could see it
Right.
happening. It
Yep.
wasn't, or something massive was thrust upon that character, and then a decision needed to be made. And then this is the way to exemplify that. Like, in my current campaign, my character was a little street rat, and he lived on the streets. At level 1, he was a urban ranger. He knew how to, get in and around the streets. He knew the mapping. He knew how to track people. He knew to do all these other things. He's an illusionist. My character's an illusionist. That happened at second level when his soul got unlocked and he realized his previous souls had this magical ability. And so he still has that level of his history of understanding urban environments and know how to, palm some food if you need a loaf of bread, and how to get information out of, other vagabonds on the streets. But now he's entering this new thing. So you can see how it's connected to the story of who they're becoming. If you can tie it into that, I think you're going to run into less issues. Those communication lines are open. And if they can't give you a good reason why they're taking 4 levels in monk off of their specifically for
Because I want magic punchies or whatever, that's the
yeah,
reason,
4
right? Yeah.
levels of monk with their rogue that gets 3 opportunity attacks around and is using the dog slicer pole arm that gives them a reach of 10 feet. So he's got this wide berth everywhere around him, and he can go bop, 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 7 times around. If they can't explain that to you in a way that ties into the character, they're probably up to some bullshit, you know?
Exactly. And look, again, I'm not saying that you have to be like some jerk as a GM or something like that. The point is, you want to be working with your characters. Like, why are you doing this? Right. And so I tend to favor systems in general that allow me to kind of make decisions as I deem appropriate at that time with my character. Now, there is another tension here that we're going to find over the course of these systems as we go through the editions. And that is, how much are you front loading versus how much are you needing to wait to unlock? Right.
Right. Right.
Okay. And I just want to take a side note here before we go into that, because that'll largely come out through the edition things. I want to take a little side note here, which is to say, everything we're talking about, if you're playing a game that isn't class based, like D&D is a class based system, right? That was
Yeah.
how they decided to break everything up originally. Like, this is a fighter, and this is a magic user, and so on and so forth.
Uh-huh.
Okay. If you're playing a game that's like skill based, right, or something like that, you don't know what this is. This is a nonsense discussion.
You get that free reign at all times. You are free as a bird, baby.
Right. You just get whatever your currency is, your XP or whatever. You invest it in whatever you want as you go up, right? So if you want to go deep, you go deep. You want to go wide, you go wide. Like, and that is the incredible benefit of systems like that. And there's plenty of good ones out there, right? That allow you to invest in this way, because not only do you see more incremental growth, it's not just like nothing, nothing, nothing level, nothing, nothing, nothing level, right? Like spikes that the class systems tend to encourage. But it's also allows you to just kind of respond to the game as it happens. Oh, we're doing this thing now. Cool. I'll invest more in this. Right. Now, the downside is characters tend to bleed together
Right.
more easily, right? Where everybody can kind of get in everybody else's stuff a little more easily. The advantage to the class system is it forms very clear roles, right? It forms the Golden Girls,
Yes.
right? Where you get these 4 clear roles. It sort of creates a better team coherency, because you need everybody else. We need this person to do this person to do this person to do that. Everybody has a set of very specialized skills, right? And together they Voltron,
Right.
right? So there are advantages and disadvantages, but my point is that like skill-based people would just look at me like I have 2 heads when we're talking about this. They're like, "Hey, dummy, we already figured this out. We got this on lock." And it's like, yeah, you do. It's a huge advantage to that system.
Yeah, as long as you can avoid that everyone is just a slightly different color of the same soup, which is it's an issue all on of itself. But
Yes, and we'll tackle some systems that are more skill based in the future. Ultimately, I think this matters because, as you mentioned at the beginning, when we talked about playing from Raceland and Caramon and making versions of those things, like, right, and we've all had characters in books and movies and stuff like that we've made versions of. There's nothing wrong with that. Of course we do.
yeah,
Right? You see a thing that's cool, you want to have a cool version of that thing. You want to kind of experience that journey, right? But a lot of characters that you might be inspired by probably aren't just like single class characters, because it's hard to map a hero's journey and like everything a character goes through onto one quote unquote class,
yeah,
right? Most things will, like Conan, Luke Skywalker, Paul Atreides, like you can kind of pick across a lot of different, very famous protagonists who go through really big changes
mm-hmm.
in their story as to exactly like what they are and what their skill sets are and what they do and stuff like that. And realistically, the closest way to get to a lot of that stuff is probably through some kind of like multiclassing kits, changes, prestige classes, whatever, right? Those kinds of mechanical expressions.
Yep, absolutely. You got to spend some time in the Dagobah system. It's really
Sure.
the core of all this, you know. Yeah. You got to have your character needs to have a montage, right? Everybody needs a montage in their life of their character at some point. And the sooner you realize that, the more fun you're going to have at the table, as you get to see that growth to this set to some sweet 80s music. And then bam, you're ready to do some force pushes,
Every part of your hero's journey, you should have 2 basic like scores. One is like the Rocky theme where you're training and you're doing a montage, right, of like learning something, and the other is you want a scene where your character is doing something and Holding Out for a Hero by Bonnie Tyler is playing, right, in your mind. Like those are the two moments you want in the journey of most characters.
And this leads back to something else we talked about, and I think we need to have a full episode on at some point in the near future, which is the glory that is downtime. And downtime is a great way for you to have those montage scenes. It's a great
Yes, it is.
breather for your characters to have a level of growth and change and realizations, and for that to then start to show itself. It gives you kind of a springboard. That springboard is often the hardest part for this. And it's so easy. It's like, well, at the end of a session, you're like, okay, level your guys up to level 5. Be back at next session for level 5. And you're like, my dwarf cleric took a level in bard. And you're like,
Right.
Okay. He just he did karaoke one night. I mean, there's your montage.
He did karaoke and decided, and it unlocked something inside of him. He was like, this is me.
Right?
This is who I am.
He's always just He's always thought that the people that are standing up and singing along to that minstrel's music every night were idiots. And then one night he had one too many. He got up there and he realized, like, this is my true calling. I am an actor.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, no, that exact thing. Like, imagine your idea of your character is like a wandering minstrel who, like, let's say this is sort of your concept from the beginning. You want to be like a wandering minstrel / performer, whatever, a rhetorician, rhetorist. I don't know. You know what I mean? Speaker.
Yeah.
Who preaches about like your God and brings the word of your God to people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Super classic cleric bard kind of thing. Right. And that's hard to achieve because it's one of those in between ideas. Right now, that one's pretty clear in betweener. There's lots of like fighter thieves, like Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser type of stuff, things like that, where it feels where the fighter rogue is like very clear. Conan is probably in that same space, by the way. He's like a fighter rogue, right? And but like there's tons of examples like that, right? Where it's your idea is what I call an in betweener. You know, it doesn't fit neatly within any of the classes, and so like to recognize that thing, you gotta bring the meat and potatoes together, right? We got to mix something up here,
right?
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes the more outlandish, the more interesting, the more dichotomy that you have, the more interesting the character is, and the more easy it is for you to play. I challenge any gazeboid out there to make a character that's based solely on Tobias Funke from Arrested Development, who he starts his character arc as an analyst / therapist, where he's very analytical. He's very understanding of how the human mind works. You know, you could make this an illusionist. You could make this some kind of investigator. But then one day he says, I am an actor. And then he has to take all of this ridiculously removed from the actor space and has to become this version of himself, a new version, born anew as the Never Nude. So by all means, that's a freebie. Y'all can use that one without any expense. So please, Tobias Funke, make this a character, please. I want to hear about their adventures.
Amazing. Yeah, I love this. I've never watched that show, but what a fun idea. I don't know anything about that character, but as you described it, it sounds very fun to play.
You've never watched Arrested Development?
No,
you need to watch the original Arrested Development. It is, I know you would love it. There is no line spared. Every line in that is either a hardcore banger, or it is equally as gorgeous that it just flies under the radar. And the more you think on it, the better it is. You need to watch that show.
I mean, it's full of every actor that I think is very, very, very fun.
At their peaks, nonetheless. Oh man.
All right. So I want to spend the rest of our time here kind of taking a journey through the editions and talking about how each one handled it and the strengths and weaknesses of each therein. Okay. All right. And I actually kind of want to start when this really came into focus, which is we're going to start with second edition. The reason I'm doing that is because it's a little more murky in earlier stuff. Like it was things you could do, and there was certainly stuff that mattered. Like being a bard, for example, in like AD&D was a real accomplishment. you had to do so many things to jump through to become like so many hoops you had to jump through to become a bard. It was not just like a class you started in.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, you had to go on the whole Guitar Center quest, which is a really long quest line.
It's a super long quest line. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then how do they manage like I'm going to multi-class into elf? You're like, what? What? How does?
But yes, I enjoyed like it was mostly the purview of humans, obviously, but I enjoyed how they constructed things like Bard. Just a quick nod to it. It was fun because it was much more like Bard is not just the medieval jester, singer, troubadour. It's not like Bard in its original conception comes from Celtic culture. Okay. And it's effectively someone who's like a warrior who had begun the druidic rituals to become a druid in the culture, but then never went all the way through. And they became like a speaker, and they were like the memory for the culture.
Yeah,
They
for the oral
they didn't write
traditions.
things down. Yes,
Yep.
and so it's a really cool historical paradigm, and I think that it's often a part of Bard that gets lost. Um, yeah. Anyways, that's all. There's a whole separate discussion. Like I could literally do a whole episode on Bard. It's my favorite class of all time, and I think it's like wildly misconstrued. And I'll tell a fun behind the scenes story about the creation of Fifth Edition and Bard and how it was almost absolutely terrible. Anyways,
all right, future
episode. Let's talk. So let's start in Second Edition, where this all kind of gets formalized, right? So in Second Edition, we have two basic concepts: multiclassing and dual classing, right? Which is sort of your I want to be more than one class thing. And then we have kits. Kits are a combination of what we would think of as backgrounds that are also modifications on your class. Okay. And so you took all of this stuff except for dual classing. You could do it first level. Okay. So the advantage here is you could be the thing that was in your mind pretty fast.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like you started the game as some version of the thing that was in your mind. So you could just be a fighter wizard at first level.
Yeah.
You just have both classes.
It's their somewhat elegant, if not a bit clunky way of expanding the amount of classes in their game, because it was much more restrained than it is today. And today it feels more like, okay, instead of doing the dual class, we're just making that its own class. And it's watered down, right? And a level of uniqueness though too, right? It's just not just like it gets both. It gets its own soup.
That's right. And mostly your dual classes your multi-classes, I apologize, were constructed out of the core four. Right? So like, yes, there were paladins and bards and stuff like that. But for the most part, your multi-classes was first of all a thing for non-humans. It's important to say, which is weird. We'll talk about that in a minute. And you had a defined list.
Yeah.
Okay. So like if you were a halfling, you could be like a fighter thief.
Mm-hmm.
That was an allowable thing.
Mm-hmm.
But you couldn't be like a druid fighter or something, right? Somebody might have been able to be that, but not you as the halfling or whatever.
Second edition loved their charts. You know, they would make decisions.
Charts, baby.
They'd make decisions on the rules simply so they could add more charts. And this was one of those examples.
And kits, what was interesting about kits is they were just wide open. They could be like your particular type of a thing. So you're a juggler or a jongleur, or what, two separate things. And that's like a thing that a bard can be, right? But there were also some kits that were like cross class. So both a fighter or a rogue or different people could be them, right? So there's like merchant stuff and things like that, or peasant hero, folk hero. Okay. And so on and so forth. And they modified your class in some way, both as you started and potentially as you leveled.
Is this kind of the origin of the more 5th edition evolved into like the background system that every character has, kind of?
To a point, but it was much heavier in a great way. So like, I'll give you an example. Okay. Your kit could be a thing that's like, let's say it was a kit for a cleric.
Mm-hmm.
All right. It might give your cleric the ability to use edged weapons.
Nice.
Something you normally couldn't do, right? And make you a better fighter in some way. Let's say it was a more martial type kit, right? Okay. So like there's kits, followers of certain gods. So you might take that, but then it also like you lose the ability to turn undead. Okay. So it would both add and subtract from your class in equal measure, right? Or like there's a paladin kit that's amazing. That's so cool. Where you get to start with your mount like right away.
The Cavalier.
Okay. Effectively, yeah.
Mhm.
There's a couple different versions of this actually, where you get to start with your mount. Like you're a mounted warrior, it's part of how you are, it's part of your character, right? You don't wait to call the mount. It is your conception of your character from the beginning is that you're a mounted warrior.
Mm.
You can just start with that mount. But then you lose other class features that the paladin gets, both at initially and as you level.
Mm.
With me?
Yep.
Okay. Some of these were pretty big. Some of these were pretty light. They often had they usually ran in tandem. Like if they had really big benefits, then they would have really big penalties. Some were just kind of cultural penalties. You had bad reaction checks with certain people, right? Because they tend to dislike you or whatever because they know who you are, that kind of thing. But it was an incredibly versatile system, and there's like hundreds and hundreds of kits. Okay, to do everything you could want. It was much, as I said, it's more mechanically heavy than a background because it could both shape your. It wasn't just your past; it also very heavily shaped your future of your class, often. But they'd also spanned in heaviness. Some kits were like super light, like you get a bonus reaction. You're better at dealing with peasants, and you're worse at dealing with nobility. Kit over. That's it. Okay. And it was mostly a role playing thing from there, whereas some were super heavy. Now, dual classing was a thing only for humans. And that's exactly what my character did. You level up to a certain point, and then at some point in time, you stop and you go back to level 1. You're like, I'm not a paladin anymore. I'm a cleric now. And you're level 1. And you can only use your abilities as a level 1 character. If you use any of your other abilities, you stop gaining, you gain half experience.
Dropping out of school. I'm going to join the circus.
This is like the Zuckerberg play of like, I'm dropping out of college to start my own company, right?
Yes.
Or whatever, that kind of thing. Yeah. Yes.
So you're stuck at
and then once you catch back up, once you catch back up and surpass your old level, so like you go to level 5 as a fighter, you dual class over, you catch back up, you become level 6 as a cleric because you found God or whatever. At that point, you now have you get to turn back on your other class. Okay. You can then use all the abilities of your original class.
So you keep like all the hit points and all that kind of stuff.
You keep all the hit points.
You're not just like completely nerfed yourself.
No, you keep all the hit points and stuff. But for like your attack, your Thaco and all of that, resets to like a level 1 character of that thing.
Now,
it doesn't actually matter. If you do this at a high enough level, you'll go on like one adventure and get experience at the end of it and level like 5 times.
Right. Because you're still getting experience based on the total level that everybody is.
Correct. So you're kind of worthless for a couple adventures, but it's an interesting system.
That's kind of fun.
Okay. It is kind of neat. Now, what I loved about second edition was a couple of things. So first of all, it plays with both the tensions. What I don't like is that it didn't have a lot of ability for you to like pivot at a later level and turn into something that opened up in your character, unless you were human.
Yeah.
If you were human, dual classing was there, and it was a great expression of that. Right. But for everybody else, you had to like lock in at level 1. Right. And I love that. That's a real double-edged sword, because I love having we talked about people just don't play to high levels. Most people are lucky if they get like to level 3 or 4.
Right.
All right. That's just the reality. So it sucks that you never get to do any of the cool things you want to do. People make these builds are like, oh yeah, level 11, all people with a fighter and a wizard and have all this. It's like, okay, sure you will, buddy. Sure you will. All right. And this just gave you that ability to like from level 1 have these cool blends of multiple classes. Some people could trip multiclass. Like fighter, wizard, like elves could be a fighter, wizard, cleric.
Wow.
Right.
That's everything.
Now you had to divide your experience in thirds into each class. So you did level slower.
But level 1, you're a fucking god because you got 3 times the stuff as every other level 1.
Yeah, baby. You are rip at level 1. Yeah. And then very soon after that, you are like, come on, guys, hold up. I fell on my keys.
Still only have 4 hit points over here, you jerks.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Yep.
The chances of you getting a level in one of your classes and getting 1 hit point out of it is very high when you're in thirds. At any rate.
Yeah. I think that there's something to be learned.
I like that you could do more, like that you can really recognize a wide, between the kits and the multiclassing, you can recognize a really wide breadth of character conceptions. And like there are limitations here, like the kits are meant to be if you don't multiclass, like you can't do both. It's kind of the general conception, right? And so the idea is, do you want to be like a different type of fighter through a kit that changes who you are? Or do you want to be a different type of fighter by multiclassing and doing that thing? And that's cool. I love that. I love being able to make like a really interesting, cool character at level 1. But I don't like that I can't like shift and grow and change and like, oh, get a new idea that I want to change who I am at level 7 because of some cool stuff that happened in the story. That's the downside.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of really cool stuff here, and I can see why they went away from it because it's kind of convoluted. And the fact that even the naming of dual class and multi-class is kind of the same, different words for the same phrase. So you're just kind of like, what? There's two different things. Like, I could see where they streamlined it in the future, make that available at later levels, and to make it a little bit more of a, if you understand how to do this thing, you'll feel confident no matter what kind of character you're playing. I think the kits would be a really sweet thing to, as it being something more in depth in a background and has more nuts and bolts, tangible things later on, and even allow that to be like a reward later on in the campaign. You're like, oh, you just like, you put your face in the tadpole pool and you got to see some weird colors. You've unlocked this kit. And now it's like,
Yeah.
it's opened up some things. So you're showing character growth that you didn't have to plan 7 levels to get. And it shows new abilities and tweaks and changes as a form of like a boon almost. They call them boons now, but boons feels like a much more watered down version of what a kit is that we see.
Much like how Boone's watered down version of alcohol. Yes, it's very similar.
Yes. But delicious.
I agree. If there's like one thing I would harvest and modernize from 2nd edition and bring into current D&D, it would be kits. I just think they're like the coolest thing. And they let you feel like you're really from a place, because a lot of the kits were geography based to the certain worlds.
I remember that.
So like you're a warrior of this particular nation. And so like it shaped you, like it made you feel like you were really there in that place, like from that place in a cool way.
I remember all those
that had a
kits
expression
from the Forgotten Realms box set in there that was all region based and stuff. Oh yeah. I think bring it back. Bring back kits. Come on, WotC. Let's do this. You have the power.
Yeah, I think backgrounds are just dumb and boring, and I think lots of people have highlighted the problems with them. Like you just mentioned, like you're a street rat and now you're this, and it's like that's cool that you've managed to find a way to really interestingly weave that story together. But a lot of people, they're like, well, I guess I have to take Smith because that's the one that has the bonuses I want, or whatever.
Putting the stat bonuses to your background, I was like, I get the theory behind it, but you really want to take such strict control over a character's story and their ability to develop the 3-dimensionality of who they are by limiting it with skills and stats. Now it's like, I guess I'm folk hero. I'm like, well, I mean, then they put a little asterisk in there and they're like, but you can move the stats to be whatever you want if you want to do that. And I'm like, well, then why'd you attach it to them in the first place?
Exactly. Just say every character you can just do +2/+1 somewhere, or +1/+1/+1. Like just divorce this completely and pretend like, and just everybody gets some bonus points because we want that to happen.
Right.
That's what you're doing here. Yeah. Okay. Anyways. All right. I don't want to devolve this into a like, let's bash on 5th edition thing. It's really easy to happen. Okay. So 3rd edition is where we get formal multi-classing and prestige classes, right? So this is where you're multi-classing. It's like the 1 level dip of ranger to get 2-weapon fighting. We all love it. We all know it. Everybody's done it. We've all made that character, certainly. If you were a spellcaster, multi-classing sucked because of the way it cut your spell slots and stuff.
It's just directly punishing you for playing that character from the beginning.
Yep. Or the prestige classes that didn't get full spellcasting advancement, like they would get it once every other level, and you're like, well, never taken that one.
Yeah, no kidding.
That's garbage.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, there was like my first like 12 to 24 months of playing 5th edition. I didn't even like dig into multi-classing in that because I had so much like PTSD from 3rd 3.5.
From 3rd, sure.
I'm just like, I'm sure I'm just going to get nerfed by making this decision, so I'm not going to even look into it. But yeah, it was harsh on you. Like they were like, we really do not want anyone to take advantage of this from a power gaming perspective. So we'll flip it on the entire
And
other
yet it
side.
was like the power gamer's wet dream in third edition for all the martial classes. You would just hop through a million things,
Yes.
grab a little bit of spellcasting because that lets me get like shield and this other thing I want, and lets me qualify for this crazy prestige class I shouldn't be able to qualify otherwise. Then I do 3 levels of this prestige class. Then I jump over here and do 2 levels of this. Then 5 levels of this. This is the build trap in just like I cannot summarize better. I talked about it already earlier, but goodness sakes, all the hard stat requirements on prestige classes, they were trying to stop power gaming. And what
Uh-huh.
they did was demolish the ability. They didn't stop power gaming at all. Power gaming was still completely off the rails in third edition. So complete failure in that
I think
regard.
it was the worst it ever was, which is
Yeah,
ironic.
absolutely. 100%. And at this, while at the same time making it so people couldn't respond naturally to choices or evolutions that happened in the game because you had to like lock in completely to certain builds, right? Like, no, I can't make a different choice. I've already got 2 levels of this, 3 levels of this. I've invested 8 skill levels and so on and so forth.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
And it's just completely out of your hands at that point. Yeah. And that's kind of, I think, where my origin of the feeling of being stuck on the guide rails of multiclassing and decision making of your characters kind of comes from. And I think a lot of people that have been played for 10, 20 years, that's where they feel restricted by this. And if you make a decision, you have to be 100% sure of it. And by doing that, you have to make sure that the payoff is there. And I mean, we look at some of the most popular, whether it's message boards, whether it's YouTube videos, whatever, about the game. Many of them are about all these fine-tuned decisions you make for building this character to be the best version of that character. And it's just like, that's so it's frustrating, but because you don't want to have a shitty character, you want your character to be cool and do their cool thing. But like, what if their
Yep.
cool thing becomes based off of the way the story went and the way that their arc progressed and the way that the world
Right.
reacted to them? Wouldn't that be swell? So,
Yeah. Now I'll give it full credit here in that I did love that you could multi-class just at any time. You could just decide to do it, right? Like you're 6 levels in a ranger, something happens in the story, you decide you want to go cleric, as long as you met the stat requirement, which wasn't insane,
mhm.
right? You could just do it. You could just jump over, right? And I do think that flexibility of that element I did like. I like that you could like choose to go into it at some point. I remember by the by, Mike Merles gave a talk and like he was talking about how much he hated the sort of like having to figure out the minutia of multi-classing for fifth edition because he was like, I went to the designers, I was like, can't it just do this? Just be like this. I wanted to just let people play the characters they want to play. And like that's the high level instinct here,
Mm,
right? And when you get wrapped around the weird, because we're trying to shove a class-based system into a more like dynamic, skill-based, be what you want when you want system, things go off the rails quickly.
right,
It's challenging.
right. Yeah.
Okay.
But third edition and then later fourth edition did give us this the fun idea of this epic nature of you get to a certain level in prestige classes and then paragon paths and epic destinies, which are like the level was it like level 10 and 15 or whatever in fourth edition.
11 was the Paragon Path, 21 was your Epic
That's
Destiny.
right. Of like you can stay on that track, but you've hit this certain level of power that are now new options are unlocked to you, kind of setting up this idea of a more structured way in your game to show how you've evolved as a character and how you've become more heroic. And I commend them for that, is like giving more guidelines within the game, rules, for something that ideally happens organically anyway, but at least we can structure it.
Right. That leads us directly to fourth edition, exactly, where you've got multi-class feats. Let's not forget about that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, like, you could take a multi-class feat, which opened up the Paragon paths potentially of those other classes,
Mm-hmm.
right? And as part of creating the notes for this, I had to go back and like look through the fourth edition player's handbook because I had to refresh myself because I have flushed, I'm not going to lie, most of that out of my mind.
uh-huh.
And I went back and looked at like the base table for level 1 through 30. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, oh my God, I forgot the nightmare that this table was, right? Of like at this level, you get your Paragon Path and a new feat and a new encounter power and a new this power. And it's like, and every level is like that, right? It's
Yeah.
just like
We had a
they're
running
just full of stuff.
we had a running joke in our campaigns. It was like it was a test. How often did we level before we used all the things we got from the previous level? And it was often. Like you're just like, I never even did that thing that I just got this level. No, I'm next level. I feel behind on me.
Right. And then you're like replacing powers and
Oh
stuff. Yeah, I was
yeah.
like, oh yes, that was in the chart too. So fourth edition Gate was sort of first to say, like, well, what if we just allow you to do this little dip, right? We give you these little multi-class feats, and they're like, it's the dip. We'll do a little dip when we dip, how you dip, right? And like now it did eventually also introduce hybrid classing in PHP 3. That was where you could like take two classes and kind of just slam them together and you were kind of half of each. But
But that was in the
kind of
that
a
was in the
like
death
fourth meets second in a weird
I was
way.
in the death throes of the edition anyway, so I kind of throw
Sure.
everything after Player's Handbook 2 from a character perspective out a window because there's like, just keep throwing shit at the wall. Come on, someone peep blind this, And that was I don't, I agree that the multi-class feats does kind of feel like some level of evolution from the original kits, that it was like a single serving, grab some interesting thing. It's not
Right.
wholly changing like kits were, because I like that really evolves or advances how you feel or how the character interacts with the world in a way. But this is like, okay, we can have some restraint on it and make you feel like you do have a little bit of some kind of arcane innate knowledge, and you can do little
Right.
bits of this. And it uses
Yep.
a regular resource, which is the finite number of feats that a character can have through their entire journey. And so it's innately restricting you a bit because you can't have all the awesome fighter feats and then also take 3 feats in wizard. So you'll innately kind of balance out in a way. And I think that that's not a bad move in general.
Yeah, I don't like I like it conceptually as an ability to dip. Again, it had this is where again, it didn't really have the ability to we lost the ability yet again to like react as you level and you were really locked in,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like your Paragon paths were so locked into happening at a specific point in time, like level 11. And that's so late in the freaking game. I wonder how many people played 4th edition for its duration and never actually gained access to any of the powers from a Paragon path
Mm.
because they just never hit that level. Okay.
We did a couple times after Paragon, but we never got to the Epic Destinies, which is level
Sure.
21.
Right.
And I don't think so. But like if you go through, I don't know if you ever went back through and like read through what the Epic Destinies did. It was just like, actually take everything you know about this game and throw it out the fucking
Sure.
window, because now everybody is like, all right, you're freaking Thanos. You can snap and destroy whatever you want and you can't die. And then you are Wolverine and then you just regenerate forever. And you're just like, how do you play this game now? Like, it certainly made you feel like superheroes in a fantasy world, and it totally transformed the game. But yeah, I don't think anyone actually played it that high anyway. So
Yeah, I mean, we did over 4th edition. We had I think 2 games where we played over level 20. So there you go. Like we did have both of those went to 30, but at any rate, okay. Then we go to 5th edition, right? Which many people are probably familiar with who are listening to this.
mm-hmm.
And it's something more akin to the 3rd edition model, but now we have like subclasses, right? So again, they're at first they were level gated at different levels in 2024. That is to say, certain classes would get them almost basically right away. Certain classes you wait until level 3. Like it was kind of spread out a little bit. Now they're all standardized in D&D 24, but it's all of a kind, right? And it's like, here's this subclass. You're not just a fighter, you're a psionic fighter. Okay. And but with multiclassing again, you can just be like, well, I'm going to take a level of fighter now because my character's been training with weapons with the person. And this is like the path that my character's on. So we opened back up that ability from a class perspective to just like jump around
Mm-hmm.
how you feel comfortable with, right?
And not feel like you sacrificed a ton, right? You still get to keep everything.
Right. Your spellcasting levels could like your total like spells per day on the chart kept advancing. All your different spellcasting classes like feed into each other on the
Yes.
base chart, but you would just be capped at like the level. But you'd still have you'd feel like, okay, I can do this, right? Which is nice. And my honest answer, and like subclasses were generally like 3 or 4 abilities you'd get over the course of your character, right? That's right. Like you're the fighter that you're an arcane archer, so you can like make magic-y arrows and shoot explodey arrows and do Hawkeye stuff or whatever, right? Do trick arrow stuff. My issue with the 5th edition concept is like multiclassing. It's a perfectly fine take. I'm not against it. There is like little mechanical quibbles I would have with it, right?
Mhm.
But for the most part, it's a perfectly fine system. I really hate subclasses. I think they're like the worst implementation. I don't even know if I'd say that. It's tough. They're so heavy and so low of where they're supposed to occur and so transformative into the type of character you are that I don't know why every game doesn't just start at level 3. Okay? Like because the the verisimilitude of the world breaks down for me when I'm like, all right, I am a halfling fighter. Okay, sure. Right. That's a thing. I love halfling fighters. It's like one of my favorite things to play. And I spend my first 2 levels and all of my background, all the story I've written, right?
Mhm.
I'm like running around hitting people with a sling and a sword.
Mhm.
That's what I do. And then all of a sudden at level 3, I am now psychic.
Yeah. Like super freaking psychic. Like I'm pretty
Right. I'm
good.
like doing telekinesis and throwing rocks around and moving people. And like none of that had anything to do with anything organic. It just happened. Right. And they're very class locked, even though sometimes they would honestly make sense to be like it'd be perfectly reasonable that you could kind of like just have a suite of abilities that could go across class,
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Right. And I just hate how I like how they work. You often end up waiting. It's like, oh, I get the good one at level 7. Okay, everybody gets to actually be, hey, everybody, we're all our actual characters at level 7. That's when we'll all get to feel like the thing
Yeah.
we are.
Yeah. Yeah, you feeling like you should be able to be the character. Yeah, they do rip the Band-Aid off pretty quick. I'm appreciative that like if you're like, oh, I really want to add some wizardy to this character, you do one level of wizard, like you feel wizardy.
Right.
That's I mean, that I
Yep.
really appreciate that. But like,
There's also, we should say, they also do have some of these feats that are in the same way. There are like the minor touch feats you can take,
yes,
so that will also give you the same things like magic initiate and stuff like that. Which, you know, those are cool too. That's so I do like that they carried over that concept. So it's like, oh yeah, you get some cantrips and a basic spell. Okay, cool. I feel a little wizardy. So yes,
right. I love giving those kinds of feats almost as like a carrot or as a reward for characters showing they're going a direction, and maybe they've hinted at
right.
it, maybe they've thought that maybe I'm going to do a little bit of this, and as a part of a big quest line or some kind of a thing, I'll give them a reward. And I kind of think the feats that I think are based on how they're playing, I will give them rewards of those feats, because if you decide you don't use it a ton, it's not a massive thing, but it's a nice little tool in your tool belt, and it shows a little bit of depth of your character. And then if you do decide you want to go further in that, now we've laid the groundwork where there's at least an on-ramp of the evolution of your character to that first level of wizard. Because otherwise it's like you said, that halfling example, it's so stark, and like I almost, again, going back to the communication thing, that we reiterate this, is if somebody is thinking that, or they're planning that from the get-go for their character, or they're seeing themselves going for that, you'd say, like, keep me in the loop. I want to set up a downtime in the campaign happens at when you're leveling, and then we can work together to flesh that out to make it feel a little bit more organic and true. Not just I went to sleep one night at the end and I woke up and now I can shoot mind bullets.
And now I'm psychic.
Yeah. And I was like, so yeah, it's it is, again, back to the communication and working with players. I do think that Pathfinder second edition does do a little bit more of a sweet, nice on ramp compared to fifth edition D&D, where it again goes back to the feat system. And the very first feat that you get in going wizard with your fighter, they actually do a good job of like laying out less nuts and bolts things. Like here's why you might want to do this. Here's what might have happened to you, why you would be thinking this. Here's the kinds of things that interest you. And then here's that first feat is like your unlock feat. It allows you to take more feats with that have now been opened up, and it gives you a couple of nice little breadcrumb trails that allows you to like ease into that, and then you can specify in what kind of wizard things would you be interested in. In 5th edition, you just like, you get all the wizard things now, and now there it's just like, no, you can get a bunch of wizard things if you commit to it, but you're like, no, I'm gonna do more of the fire mage stuff because that would make sense if I'm a fighter and it's like,
Right.
woof, I got flaming sword now. That would be a reason why I would be more interested in the arcane arts and that kind of thing. So it's not perfect, but it kind of gives us a little bit more modern take on the 3rd edition 3.5 Pathfinder 1 version of multiclassing.
What I really want to know from our audience is what their favorite version of this thing is. Like, so Gazeboids, I want to know which one you like the most. Drop it down in the comments. But importantly, I don't just want you to say, like, I like this thing because I think it's cool and I build a broken character. Like, okay, congratulations. But like, what I'm interested in is what you see as the pros and cons of it, and what about that appeals to you.
Right.
Okay. That's what's most interesting to me is like, why does this system appeal to you? And what do you see as the negatives that don't bother you?
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And like in your heart of hearts, having played some amount of tabletop RPGs before, like what would be the ideal version for you? You're like, I wish it was like this, or I liked
Right.
this, but I kind of feel like it wasn't like this. This is obviously just us getting crowdsourcing for information for the RPG that we put out in 5 to 25 years from now. So we're just getting some data sets here. So I really like to hear that kind of stuff just for our regular home games too. Like you are the master and commander of your own destiny, and if you like house ruling and figuring out which ways at its core you think feels best, you can integrate that in a way, and as long as you have good open communication and the trust of your players to be like, I don't want anyone to feel like they weren't strong enough. I don't want anyone to feel like they overtake in a power level, and we're going to work through this together to play the character you want to play, and so give them the leash. And I always find it's better to give people a strong feeling that the uniqueness of their character, and we can work together to rein it in or sculpt it for your needs.
Yeah, that's right. I think if it was my perfect world, it would probably be some kind of mix of like 2nd edition and 5th edition. I think is probably what I would end up doing. Like where you can both be more from this jump in some way, but also then change later and jump over and something like that. I'd certainly get rid of the subclasses. I'd probably bring in kits. I'd have some kind of ability to express or take into certain things later, but it would be pretty flexible. Like I don't know what all that looks like, but that's kind of where my head's at, right?
Yeah,
Again.
I agree. I think just
Um,
being more than a single option is good. When you one where it's much more organic, like kits, and you can feel the change and you can roll it into your character, whether at the beginning or later on, or even a great tool to use as rewards or storytelling through the DM, and then a little bit more focused building that still doesn't define. I think that's a big thing for me is
it
like,
doesn't lock you in.
yeah, I
Yeah,
don't want to feel locked in and feeling bad about making wrong decision if I make this one first decision. You know,
that's
if
right.
we can have a level of trust there, that'd be good. Well, I think we did it. We solved all the world's problems yet again. It doesn't take us long. It takes us about an hour and 20 minutes every week to solve the world's problems. It's not so bad. But we hope you all had a good time. We had a good time, and we're going to be back again next week with another episode. Hope you all find some time to get some dice rolling at your tables and enjoy your tabletop RPGs. Vince, any parting remarks?
Don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe, do all those things. Tell your friends about it. We want to grow the Gazeboid Nation until we too are a mighty orc horde, only able to be taken out by a reptilian gargantua.
Yeah, you just
So hit those buttons.
yeah. I just make sure there's no ranger that can mind control them. Right.
That's
Then
right.
we're in trouble. We're all in trouble. All right. Bye.
Bye.